Welcome into another edition of New Track Record. Caleb Hatch and Justin Kinney with you, and we're back a day early. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Caleb.
This is perhaps, dare I use the word, unprecedented.
You know, I saw that book or that word in a book or magazine something I was reading, and I was like, man, we haven't used that in a while on the podcast, but I feel like it fits for this episode of the podcast.
So we're back a day early here on Wednesday, July 13th, recording, and it's all because of one not so simple story. Alex Palou reportedly, re-signs
reportedly with two teams,
Ganassi, and then a few hours later, McLaren announces a deal with Palou. Now, McLaren, not specifically Aero McLaren SP, and now Ganassi saying, no, we still have claims to his services, so we'll kind of run down the timeline first and then get into everything and what we think. Also, we'll have some thoughts on Colton Herta getting his first McLaren F1 TPC test. We thought that would be the lead this week.
We thought that would, definitely be the biggest story of the week.
And then, of course, a preview of the Honda Indy Toronto at Exhibition Place coming up this weekend.
Back in Canada, I'm excited.
Yes, I'm excited for this race, and here we go. We'll start with the timeline. First off, Ganassi extends Palou deal. So that's the headline we get. We get confirmation of that Tuesday afternoon. Okay, not a big surprise.
Right? It felt okay. Everything we're hearing is this is going to happen. So, business as usual. So we felt like that was just kind of get it out of the way and confirm what we all thought.
So they announced that Chip Ganassi Racing exercised their option to extend Alex Palou through the 2023 season. Now, this is where things get interesting, right? This is where things take a turn. So I'm pulling up the press release, and this quote attributed to Alex Palou, very important word, attributed. "It's a great feeling knowing I'll be back with Chip Ganassi Racing next season," said Alex Palou. "The team welcomed me with open arms from day one, and I'm excited to continue working with Chip, Mike Hull, the folks on the number 10 NTT data car, and everyone within the organization. The goals remain the same, and we'll continue to work relentlessly towards achieving them." Okay, so that's in the release. Alex Palou back with Ganassi next year, team option. Okay.
And there was a Chip quote in there. It was,
pretty standard press release. Nothing about it seems any different from anything. However, after that release, Alex Palou tweets on his own Twitter account,
which you sent me yesterday. Yes. And I'm going, oh, okay, here, what do we got? And my jaw dropped. Yeah. Literally.
I could not believe what was happening. Palou tweeted, "I have recently learned from the media that this afternoon," this is Tuesday afternoon, "without my approval, Chip Ganassi Racing issued a press release announcing that I would be driving with CGR in 2023. Even more surprising was that CGR's release included a quote," and he used quote and put quotation marks around the word quote, "which did not come from me. I did not approve that press release, and I did not author or approve that quote. As I have recently informed CGR, for personal reasons, I do not intend to continue with the team after 2022. This evening's unfortunate events aside, I have great respect for the CGR team and look forward to finishing this season strongly together." That is unlike anything I think we have ever seen in the sport when it comes to driver news. Yes, there's been some shocking things during the life of this podcast, and slightly before, you had Fernando Alonso running the Indy 500 in 2017, Roger Penske buying IndyCar and IMS back the end of 2019. This is right up there with those, if not exceeding them.
And I feel like this story is still developing, still ongoing. This is not a simple thing of the announcement comes and then we deal with the fallout or the after effects. This is going to be a thing, at least for the foreseeable future, as these two teams basically fight over the services of Alex Palou and basically who's going to have to pay who what to drive where.
Yes, and we get into the legal battle of everything with that. So on the timeline, so Palou issues this denial. Then you look at the timestamp. So his tweet was sent at 7:15 p.m. Eastern, July 12th. Then you have Adam Stern report 5 minutes later McLaren says Alex Palou is joining its team in 2023. He has a picture of the release. And then the McLaren tweet goes out officially 2 minutes later. Hola, Alex, McLaren Racing. Again, McLaren Racing, that's very important. Welcomes IndyCar champion Alex Palou to its driver roster from 2023 as the team continues to build talent across all of its racing series. Our full driver lineup across all racing series will be confirmed in due course.
Ooh, so many layers to this thing. It's like an onion, folks, and we're going to peel every single layer of this off. Marshall Pruitt made a good point in one of his stories at racer.com that the timing of the release for McLaren was not conducive to, prime time in terms of attention from the media. It ended up being it because it was such a bombshell, but it was obviously a reaction to the earlier release by Ganassi. Both Palou's response and McLaren's announcement is due to the timing. They did it because Ganassi got in front of whatever the hell is going on here. So this was not planned, I don't think, on the McLaren side or the Palou side yesterday. It was purely a reaction of Chip Ganassi Racing announcing that they effectively had picked up the option for Alex Palou, which they are right to do in the contract. It from what we understand, team options for 23 and 24, and you can pick it up a year at a time. All Chip Ganassi has done is picked up that option. So effectively, McLaren is going to have to buy out that contract for Alex Palou to race for McLaren next year, unless there is some sort of clause or legalese that McLaren and Alex Palou know of in that contract that will allow them to break it. And, I don't know if that contract is for IndyCar only, and if they put Alex Palou into a Formula E seat or a McLaren F1 test driver seat, that null and voids the contract. There's just so many layers to this thing. But I think we can agree on the fact that Alex Palou is done at Chip Ganassi Racing at the conclusion of this season at the latest. If there was any team owner that would take real exception to this situation and make a move such as removing a driver that's fourth in the standings from the seat for the rest of the year, it would be Chip Ganassi, in my opinion. Not saying it's going to happen, but it wouldn't shock me at this point. So many layers to this thing, Caleb, and so many angles you can attack it from.
Yeah, and I guess now that we've gone through the timeline, what we know, because look, beyond all of that, everything else is essentially speculation, right? I mean, we can speculate on things, and you mentioned it, the contract. What we do know, and the wording is very specific on this, and I thought Will Buxton, who covers Formula One, but also has done some stuff with IndyCar in the past during his days with NBC. But I thought this was pretty pertinent, what he had to say. IndyCar champions automatically get the 40 points required for a super license, and the release says that he'll be on McLaren's TPC program running the 2021 F1 car. So that's the same testing of a previous car program that Colton Herta had earlier this week that he did at Portimao, and then also Pato Award set to join as well. So Palou will be on that schedule. Buxton goes on to say, curiouser and curiouser, as I remarked yesterday, McLaren are being very smart in their language. And then you throw on, there's so many ramifications on this. It's not just Air McLaren SP, Alex Palou, and Chip Ganassi Racing, right? I mean, there's so many dominoes that fall. All of this happening, Daniel Ricciardo even sent out a statement on all of this.
Don't forget about me.
There have been a lot of rumors around my future in Formula One, but I want you to hear it from me. I am committed to McLaren until the end of next year and am not walking away from the sport. Appreciate it. Hasn't always been easy, but who wants easy? I'm working with the team to make improvements and get the car right and back to the front where it belongs. I still want this more than ever. See you in Le Castellet. Daniel. Okay, so...
They're in France next year?
I would
next
assume.
Week?
And
yeah.
Apologies for probably butchering that pronunciation.
If you added hon at the end, it would have been perfect.
Yeah.
That's how you speak French.
So he puts out a statement. That comes after a BBC article that came up earlier this week, basically saying that, Ricciardo wants to move on from F1. So that's where that comes from. And those rumors have been there. And there have been rumors. Look, there have been rumors all this season that with McLaren's IndyCar program, that are they going to slot in Colton Herta into one of those seats? And we all thought 2024. But then we learned, Zach Brown talking with Nathan Brown in the Indy Star back in May, that there are, quote, mechanisms in place.
There are always mechanisms in place for contracts. That's, Alex Palou was, locked in, right, for 23 and 24. It's team option. So, but that, not so fast. And before we continue to go, props to Jenna Fryer, because she was the first one that dropped the Alex Palou McLaren link talk. And basically she said, after locking up Alexander Rossi, McLaren was eyeing Alex Palou, and everybody said, well, he's under contract. That can't happen. But as we're seeing, contracts mean nothing in motorsport. So just because Daniel Ricciardo is under contract next year at McLaren doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be in an F1 seat for McLaren or even with McLaren whatsoever. I mean, they could buy that contract out if they wanted to.
And also props to Tony Kanaan. Again, he responded to this back in early June. It was a post from a Brazilian IndyCar blog. And again, this is translated, but it says, none of the two people will fall from their chairs when they know. And the blog was citing Felix Rosenqvist or Rinus VeeKay, talking about after Alexander Rossi to McLaren, who would be in that other car. Which because that's what we all thought.
Right. Which tells you that this has been worked on for quite some time. This has been rumored. This has been discussed. I have a feeling that this did not shock anybody in the IndyCar paddock, because it sounds like this was developing into a thing a couple months ago, evidenced by Tony Kanaan's tweet.
Yeah. And by that point,
and
it
Jenna
was
Fryer's tweet.
Clearly,
right?
Again, by late May, early June, I mean, this has clearly been circulating and we got confirmation. But again, these rumors don't come up until after the fact. It's not like they're reported in real time.
Right.
And you have to wait until race weekends a lot of times for these reporters to follow up on things like that.
Yeah. And, let's look at this as how it is the fact that Alex Palou is going to McLaren, I think, is very much to do with having an F1 opportunity, whether it's a test, whether it's being a test driver, whether it's just saying this is the avenue that's better for you to try to get to Formula One. And you look at Andretti Autosport, and for all their faults, they have come to an agreement with Zach Brown, and, guarantee you, Michael and Zach get along a lot better than Zach and Chip even before this. But they came to a deal and say, yes, he's going to do some F1 McLaren stuff, but he's also still at Andretti Autosport, right? I think that potential same proposal or same idea came up, and Chip Ganassi was like, no, you're not doing that.
Well, and they even doubled down on their deal. Our release today said that Alex Palou is under contract with the team through 2023. So they were very specific that, no, they're not budging from this. So,
but that's just like a mechanism that we're picking up the option, which means that you're going to have to buy it out, right?
Yes.
The most egregious thing of the entire announcement yesterday from Chip Ganassi on Tuesday was the fact that there was a fake quote in there. And when we start understanding in the world of PR, I guess you do this.
So
it's shocking, but I guess.
I was telling Abby about all this, and she said, I used to have to write up quotes all the time back when she was in marketing and communications. Now she's just doing marketing work. But she said, yeah, that's pretty common in the industry. However, she said
approval of that.
Exactly. She said she would always go to the executive for approval of the quote before sending the release out. And that's the part where things were not done correctly, according to Alex Palou.
I'm sure it went to Chip Ganassi, who approved it. The fact is they didn't go to Alex Palou to approve it.
But a lot of times, as people pointed out, and we'll get to this later in the mailbag, but a lot of times they're not getting driver approval for every announcement. I mean, a lot of times I'd like to thank sponsor XYZ for coming on board. Yeah. And I'm excited to be racing at XYZ racetrack this weekend and hoping for a good result for the team. I mean, pretty standard stuff.
Yeah, I get it. But at the same time, it can bite you in the butt. And this is a circumstance where it perfectly does, right? is you have a quote from somebody that maybe Alex Palou did say that, or that's, common practice when a contract is signed or picked up. But the fact that you put that in, if Chip Ganassi had left that quote out yesterday, I would have no problem with what Chip Ganassi Racing did yesterday. All they did was announce that they had picked up Palou's contract for 2023, which is within their right due to the contract. But the fact that that quote is in there really kind of muddies the water for me.
All right, so let's look at the ramifications first, and then we'll get to kind of the legal side stuff after. So first off, assuming everything happens that Palou is with McLaren. Now, McLaren Racing, we're not going to assume Aaron McLaren SP.
Yes.
But obviously we know for Aaron McLaren SP next year, we have Alexander Rossi in a car. We have Pato O'Ward in a car. Third car, one would presume it would be Palou if this goes through.
Right.
And then Felix Rosenqvist would go to Formula E. Palou would still have his TPC F1 testing deal along with O'Ward and Herta. I would assume that would continue, if they renew those types of contracts. But obviously Palou would have it. O'Ward would presumably have it as well for next year.
Right.
And then Rosenqvist to Formula E. They have another Formula E seat. I don't think that'll impact an IndyCar because I think that could be another former F1 type name. So that's that. Then you get to the Ganassi side. Obviously, the 10 car is open. People were speculating right off the bat, with Tony Kanaan being the 10 car this weekend. No, he's racing SRX at I-55 Speedway in Missouri this weekend, so that is not happening. And not that it was super realistic, but then you have to get to what are other names that are possible. So Sebastian Bourdais would be a possibility, right? Not just on a fill-in basis, but I'm talking full-time. People connected to the team. Sebastian Bourdais and Ryan Hunter-Reay, the first names you throw out there, only because they're already employed by the team. Not saying they'll get the ride, but they're already employed by the team.
And you're talking 2023 full-time ride is what you're talking about right now.
Yes. Now, we get two more obvious candidates. You would think, Rinus VeeKay would be one if he doesn't stay with ECR, and we thought he was a strong candidate for that McLaren seat in IndyCar. And again, rightfully so. He's a looming free agent. Makes sense. After that, I think this is where it gets pretty tricky.
It does. For the first time in a long time, we looked at Chip Ganassi's driver lineup and felt they're pretty set for the foreseeable future with Scott Dixon for the next couple years, and eventually he's going to hang it up. But you feel, okay, you have Alex Palou, a championship winner, and you have Marcus Ericsson, a 500 winner in the paddock. So you're feeling pretty good about your driver lineup, and then peripherally you add a couple other guys. Now all of a sudden you let Alex Palou go, and that's the whole thing. So what made Alex Palou leave? And the majority opinion is because of the Formula One, the lure of Formula One, right? But also, from reading Marshall Pruitt and reading between the lines, Alex Palou was not happy with his contract. It was a contract that was multiple years and was before his winning of the championship, right? He felt he deserved more money. And Chip Ganassi Racing was not giving him that money or the respect or the contract that he felt he deserved, right? And I think that was that extra push out the door is I'm not getting the respect of this team, and they're not going to give me other opportunities to potentially, allow me to dabble in Formula One like Andretti is letting Colton Herta do it. Those are the two driving factors, I think.
Well, and you have to remember, going to the contract side, Palou was signed as essentially an unproven second-year driver going into last season.
He was 16th in points his first year with Coyne?
And there were flashes, obviously. Sure. We knew he had talent, but when you're with a team for 1 year, you're 16th in points. Look, we saw it with Ganassi before. Ed Jones, he had a solid year with Coyne and then gets picked up by Ganassi, didn't go well. Felix Rosenqvist was kind of coveted by Ganassi and took him a bit. Now he did get a win, and then we've seen him kind of regain that form with McLaren in year 2. But it's no guarantee, right? And so that original contract that was signed, I'm sure was on the cheap. Now, I guess I'm surprised that contract was a multi-year deal and a true multi-year deal.
Right.
There was nothing reported that I can recall of that he was set for 1 year and then a team option
Correct.
driver option for year 2. So a true
like
multi-year deal.
Yeah, it was like a 2-year deal with 2 team options for additional years.
So obviously Ganassi picking up the team option for 23. So getting into the contract side now, you mentioned it. This essentially is McLaren surprised by this move. They somehow learned of the discussions. Now they're going to be forced to pay a buyout and pay more money. But however, like you said, his current contract is still not going to be market rate for a championship winning driver, because this was signed back in 2019 going into 2020.
Yeah.
So the buyout can't be that expensive. It's not like they can hold a king's ransom, right?
I mean, it's all about that fine print in that contract, right? I mean, another question is with Marshall Pruitt bringing it up is, are there right now 2 contracts with Alex Palou's signature committing to 2 teams for 2023? So if he signed that contract in which there was a team option for 2023 and indeed CGR picked it up, then he's locked into that contract. And then did he sign a contract then to lock him in with 2023 with McLaren? I mean, that, legally, that's where it gets messy, because, does McLaren have an eye on some sort of out clause, or, reading between the lines found something to opt out? Are they willing to buy out that contract? I mean, those are the questions. And I think, look, nobody should feel sorry for Chip Ganassi in this. And this is the whole overriding thing, is for the longest time, the big teams of IndyCar plucked the prospects from the smaller teams in IndyCar. Right. So everybody from Joseph Newgarden to, even Alex Palou to Marcus Ericsson to, all these drivers at the top teams started, a lot of them, at the smaller teams. So teams like Dale Coyne and other teams right now are kind of laughing, going, see, this is how it is. This is what we had to deal with, right? Where we would develop a driver, feel pretty good, and then he goes to a better opportunity, more money, more opportunity. That's exactly what Alex Palou is doing. It's just, it's incredibly messy with the contract situation.
Well, and teams like Ganassi and Andretti aren't used to losing drivers to anyone but Penske. And even that is pretty rare.
Yeah, right.
And so this is kind of a new territory for a team like Ganassi to lose someone to another team that's not Penske. Like, I think everyone would understand if it was to Penske, but even now, McLaren, they may not have the on-track results. And look, it would take a long time for them to catch up to the on-track results of Penske,
right,
in IndyCar. But they have resources that are equal or greater to that of Penske.
I mean,
greater, I guess.
And I don't know how much the overlap is between Formula One and IndyCar in terms of assets and capital being able to be used. But the fact is that McLaren, outside of Penske, has the biggest amount of capital to tap into in IndyCar. It's not even close. Like we knew that McLaren entering IndyCar was a big deal, but I don't think it's really hit us until stuff like this, right? Where they're coming in and throwing their weight around and throwing their money around and throwing their influence around and throwing their pipeline to Formula One around to completely offset the advantages that we felt the top teams in IndyCar had.
Yeah,
right?
Because of that Formula One connection and just, again, scale, right?
Yeah.
Penske has scale because they're in multiple series. Andretti is in multiple series. Ganassi.
But none of them are Formula
multiple
One.
Series. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Some of them have had cup programs or still do sports car programs.
But it's not Formula One.
Supercars. Exactly. It does not compare to the money in Formula One.
And not only that, it's the pinnacle, not only, of motorsport in the world, of open wheel racing in the world, right? So there's a bigger, easier path from, so-called easier, from open wheel racing in North America to open wheel racing in Formula One. And we can argue, really it isn't. But when that is your goal to achieve that, and now you can be with a team that has a natural pipeline in there, that has the contacts, then you're going to have drivers matriculate over there. But I don't think we can overstate what happened with this situation, in which a championship winning driver with one of the perennially the top two teams in the sport of IndyCar over the last generation, lost its championship winning driver to another team. You just don't see it. Drivers don't leave Ganassi. Drivers don't leave Penske to go to other teams in IndyCar. That just happened, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I love it because it just throws everything up for grabs now.
Upending the status quo is obviously going to be shocking to the system, but it's creating drama. It's creating not only attention among IndyCar fans and motorsports fans in the U.S. I mean, this story generated global attention.
Yeah. And something else, McLaren has, we talk so much about the drama, real or contrived in Formula One and Drive to Survive is, you look around in IndyCar, paddock's boring, everybody's nice. McLaren has brought that infusion of Formula One in terms of behind the scenes negotiating and in really bringing tension and drama to the paddock at this point, particularly between McLaren and Chip Ganassi, and even more particularly Zach Brown and Chip Ganassi, right?
And here we thought Rossi going from Andretti to McLaren was their big move, for 2023, picking up an Indy 500 driver and a multi-time championship contender, race winner. Yeah, he has struggled up until this season, the past couple of years, but still a very talented driver who was the face of a team.
Right.
And picking him away, and here they pick away, maybe not necessarily the face of Ganassi now, but he'd become the face of Ganassi for a long time in the future.
I mean, he's on the load screen of the app at the beginning of the year, right? He was the only, if I remember, the only Ganassi driver up there. There was no Scott Dixon in that load screen. I think you can still check it even now. So he was in very much a face of the series, in their opinion, and he's been bought out. He's going to another team. So I just think, we were begging for drama, right? Now we have it in ways that we never thought possible.
And now you get back to, again, assuming Palou is an IndyCar, which depends on the contracts. If McLaren found some out that they can make that happen, they will do it. Otherwise, he could be racing Formula E. I doubt it. He could be a reserve driver for the F1 team next year until he can compete, elsewhere, until they have a spot for him. But it's clearly worth it for him monetarily because, again, outside of getting that championship bonus for IndyCar that stayed $1 million for as long as I can remember. And again, not all that's going to the driver. You always have taxes, and then a cut of that, I'm sure, is going back to the team. So he's woefully underpaid as it is.
Yeah.
And you have to look to your future. Well, this is a future opportunity.
And I feel it's a lesson to Chip Ganassi because I feel that team is kind of skirted along with not paying top dollar to guys that aren't named Scott Dixon because it's an honor to be with Chip Ganassi Racing in the history, blah, blah, blah. And McLaren just proved that you better pay up for your drivers, right? Because no contract is unbreakable. Or at least cannot be bought out, particularly with an organization like McLaren that has the money and assets that it has.
So we assume we have an open seat at the 10. We mentioned Rinus VeeKay. After that, it's pretty slim as far as current IndyCar drivers. Could it be someone from outside IndyCar getting that seat? Would not surprise me at all.
And I think, Chip Ganassi is going to be aggressive now. Does he go after a Callum Ilott? Potentially.
That's another name that's been mentioned.
Does he try to find the next Alex Palou, so to speak, a guy that's coming up and could potentially slide in and surprise everybody and compete for a championship? I mean, the gloves are off, not just with Chip and Zach Brown, but I think everybody in the paddock. I think it's really going to this is really setting a precedent that it's becoming more cutthroat in the paddock to sign talent because you have teams that are going to come in and not honor the gentlemanly agreements that are part of IndyCar for the longest time. They're coming in and they're going to make a splash and they're going to pursue the drivers that they want. And they're not going to be, turned down just because there's a contract in place for this many years. They are going to get what they want. if that driver is open to, reciprocation and is interested. And this kind of proves it. So I think it's going to make every team in the paddock really look themselves in the mirror and say, man, we really need to provide for these drivers because contracts mean nothing.
They've upended, they being Arrow McLaren SP, have upended the system. I'm sure their drivers are getting paid better than a lot of other drivers in the series. And they're forcing teams to be more competitive, not just with signing drivers, but with development, with sponsorship, with crew, with engineers. I mean, you got to remember they plucked Craig Hampson away
right
a couple years ago, and that was a big coup on the engineering side. And now they're just picking drivers away to get who they want for their lineup. And so far it's working as far as picking who they want and who is available. So we'll see. But the next thing is obviously who will be the number 10 driver. And that's the ultimate question we'll have going into this weekend. And we'll see if any names emerge.
I mean, I feel like that number 10 could be open as soon as Iowa, in my opinion. I don't know if it's likely. I mean, who knows at this point what's going to happen, but it wouldn't shock me. I don't know if Alex Palou completes the season with CGR.
Because of the different contracts, you would think he'd have to be in place, but I mean, I'm sure there will be.
Could they sideline him and still honor the contract? Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, are they really going to be sharing, just look at the driver meetings and team meetings, and going over, so-called secrets of team, all of a sudden I'm sure it's similar to Andretti that Rossi has kind of been pushed aside in terms of those conversations. You're not going to have those conversations now with Alex Palou. And, man, you'd love to be able to watch that team meeting going into this weekend, right?
Yeah. And something Jenna Fryer pointed out on Twitter, I'm reminded of something Chip Ganassi has said repeatedly since selling his NASCAR team. Everything I have is for sale. She says, I presume that includes the existing option year or years on Palou's contract.
And that's why I think CGR picked up that contract for next year. Not that they expect at this point for Alex Palou to be back with that team, but it makes it much more lucrative for CGR in terms of having to buy out that year and potentially 2 years. I mean, based on the fine print, McLaren may have to buy out 23 and 24 for Alex Palou.
And probably the total of that cost is still less than they're paying him for next year.
I mean, between the contract and I'm, every contract has a buyout clause, or at least, most contracts. So I'm sure there's a number that says to be bought out of this contract is X amount of money. And McLaren probably knows that. And McLaren sounds like is willing to pay it.
One final question before we move on to Colton Herta getting his first F1 test. Do we expect Alex Palou to be with the team through the remainder of the season?
I don't. Most teams, I would say yes. I just feel like that. I feel like Chip Ganassi has a bit of spite, and he will not be afraid to exercise an option to kind of steal back the control, because he's effectively lost control of this situation. I could see him to make a point, even if Alex Palou's still in the thick of a championship race, pulling him out of the seat, which would just be amazing for drama. I would love it.
We'll find out again this weekend as IndyCar is at Toronto. If Palou is there, I presume he will be. I presume he'll be driving, but the future of that ride, I expect him to finish out the season. I don't really have doubts, but like you said, it may not be up to Palou on that. It may be up to attorneys and contracts and things of that nature. Obviously, Palou will have to be paid out. Otherwise, then you'll have a separate lawsuit. But there is a lot at play here. Okay, the story we thought would be the lead this week. Colton Herta gets his first TPC McLaren F1 test, the testing of a previous car, as he was in Portimao to test the McLaren MCL 35M, last year's F1 entry for the Papaya team. Quite impressed was the quote that McLaren officials had on Colton Herta in his test. He got 2 days of testing, Monday and Tuesday. So things went presumably quite well for Herta on the test. Obviously, we won't know of any further testing until after the summer F1 break, which we would expect he would be a strong candidate to participate in FP1 at COTA coming up in October.
That'll be exciting, and all indications were McLaren was very impressed with what Colton Herta did at Portimao. So, it always seemed to go back and forth between Herta and Pato Award. So, I guess Herta is in the command seat right now in terms of that, having that edge.
162 laps on the course over 2 days, over 460 miles. And Andreas Seidel was impressed with his fitness approach to get the most out of the seat time. They will compare the data. Again, different time of year between last year's race and now with the Portuguese Grand Prix.
Isn't it amazing, like the next level the Formula One goes? So if we just had a test at Portimao or something random, we would say, oh, this person, we don't, but people would say, oh, this driver is fastest and this person's second, third, fourth. McLaren is just now going over the data. Timing's one thing, but all about conditions and tires and this year's car compared to last year's car and all that stuff. And just the information that they're going over to really kind of delve into just how good or bad Colton Herta was is certainly next level.
And they will do it, and we'll see. They'll be looking at his performance, and Seidel says it's obviously very difficult to compare because conditions are completely different. You're on different tires as well from Pirelli. But of course, in the next days, the team will go into the data in detail to get an initial idea of the potential Colton has shown in our car. And then we'll have a better picture. Will Stevens took part in testing today on Wednesday as their testing driver. But all that said, they're impressed. If they weren't impressed, they wouldn't say it. So that's good news for Colton Herta. And again, it's not just Coda. They have to run an F1 rookie 2 times this year in an FP1. So could it be Herta and someone else? Could it be Herta both sessions? It depends on if they're trying to get more super license points and what the needs are with that. But all in all, good stuff on testing for Herta. Because we don't know any times, it's really, again, though, testing times are everything. But on this case, they are, because you're trying to get a comparison to how someone is performing against an established standard. And
right.
We don't know that.
Yeah. And we cannot stress how important these tests are for drivers. This may be your one and only chance at turning some heads, right? For the right people at the right organization. This isn't just a casual, I want to say casual, but we talk about Stingray Robb just got a test at Mid-Ohio, right? The pressure on Stingray Robb is big to impress, but doesn't even pale in comparison to the pressure Colton Herta had testing that car.
Christian Rasmussen also, his teammate with Andretti and Indy Lights, they had a test day on Tuesday at Mid-Ohio. But yes, the pressure to perform, knowing that, you're not in their most up-to-date car, but this is the best comparison and best opportunity you're going to get in a testing program. Everything is set up for your success. You just have to excel. You
have to execute for sure. Now, Caleb, it seems to be changing daily based on every IndyCar tidbit of news and even Formula One tidbit of news that we get. But right now, as we record this podcast here on Wednesday afternoon, what does the driver lineup for McLaren F1 look like next year? Is it Lando and Ricciardo?
Honestly, I don't think so.
Do you feel one of Herta, Pato, Palou could be in that second seat?
I do. And another name to throw into it. This is a guy who's waiting on a seat in Formula One.
Oscar Piastri?
Correct.
Which he's what, a Williams junior driver or test driver or something like that?
He was with Alpine.
Okay.
And again, he's waiting on a seat because they simply don't have one. But that is another name that has been thrown at me by IndyCar Deep Throat. So you just have more options in F1, and then IndyCar Deep Throat also saying that so Piastri could be running some races for McLaren in IndyCar next year.
I mean, this is the beauty of what Zach Brown is doing, is he's gathering this gaggle of talent and then is just going to slot it in where it best maximizes their potential and best for McLaren.
Then goes on to say, by 2024, I thought that both Ricciardo and Norris will be gone. Norris apparently coveted by Red Bull as a replacement for Perez.
I could see it. I mean, Perez has just been signed to an extension.
But a 1-year extension.
Just a 1 year. Luckily, he's performed enough this year. Not recently. But, he won at least one race this year. Even two. Can't remember. But, yeah, I feel like right now is I agree with you. I don't know if Rick is back in Formula One next year at this point. And this is the thing, Colton Herta, you can say, he has a contract for 2020. Contracts don't matter, right? I mean,
they
McLaren
can be bought out.
Yeah, McLaren is paying $40 million to Daniel Ricciardo to race for them this year in Formula One. Like, what do you think is the collective amount of money paid to full-time IndyCar drivers in 2022? It's probably close to 40 million. I mean, I don't think it's probably over 50 million.
As far as for the entire grid?
The entire grid. How many people are making over $1 million? 6?
I'd be surprised if it's that many.
I mean, yeah, I'm saying like McLaren is paying $40 million for one driver. The highest paid driver in IndyCar, what would you say, is probably making 3 tops?
Tops, yeah. And you would assume that would be Dixon.
Right. So we're talking about an astronomical amount of money that McLaren could throw. They're not going to pay a driver $40 million in IndyCar, obviously, but they could pay $3 million to somebody, and it's chump change compared to what they're giving to Ricciardo. That's the game that McLaren can play that nobody else can play in IndyCar, is the amount of assets they have, capital, and that pathway. It's a trifecta of goodness for McLaren.
And Herta sounds pretty confident on how his test went. And again, I mentioned the quotes from Andreas Seidel. So they were happy with the test, saying quite impressed. All that goes to show that he could be not for long in IndyCar.
I mean, I would say one FP1 is one thing. If Colton Herta gets both FP1s for McLaren, that is as big of an indication as any that he's going to be with McLaren F1 next year.
Well, and I think we'll know shortly after the F1 summer break. So late August when they come back, I think we'll know our answer on Ricciardo for next year.
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff will happen either before or during the summer break for Formula One.
Okay, time now to preview the Honda Indy Toronto.
Oh, there's a race this weekend?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a lot to get to, not just on the track, but off the track for this weekend. First off, this race on Peacock.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Okay.
The first Peacock and only Peacock exclusive race of the year.
I don't mind it. You don't mind it.
No.
But a certain, and I think minority of people, vocal minority, it bothers them.
That's how that works. It's usually always a vocal minority. So first, we'll start with the Peacock angle. Again, only $5 a month. There might even be a 7-day free trial, so you could just get it for that. But you need Peacock Premium. If I'm not,
you need the $5 one.
Yes,
it's not the free.
That option. Okay, so you can download the app, watch on your smartphone, tablet, on your smart TV, or if you have like a Roku or Apple TV, Google Fire Stick. Again, it's very easy to get.
65-year-old parents have multiple Fire Sticks. They know how to operate them. It's not rocket science. Okay.
If you have Netflix on your device, you can get Peacock on your device.
Yes, very much so. And look, okay, $5 a month, you can complain about that. Your cable package, if you divided it by how much you pay by the channels you actually watch, you're probably paying $5 a month for certain channels. It's not that big
easily.
of a deal,
ESPN,
right?
You're paying probably like $12 to $15 a month.
Based on your cable package, those whether it's Dish or Xfinity or whatever, they have to pay per person a fee to those networks. So it's not that big of a deal, folks.
All right, so here's some other options courtesy of Necktie, Arnie Shribben of IndyCar Communications. If you have Xfinity cable or internet, Peacock Premium is currently included for all Xfinity Flex customers and Xfinity X1 and video customers who have a subscription to Xfinity Internet or Digital Starter TV or equivalent. This also works if you have Cox Communications Contour service. So it's included for a lot of you. That's a good starting point for that. All right, so then we get to things on the track. Our 3 key stats plus some bonus stats from Chad 200. First off, Power, 3 wins, 2 poles, 162 laps led. The last 3 finishes, 21st, 18th, and 18th.
Woo.
Elio finished second in 3 of the last 6 races here. Simon, last 3 finishes here are 5th, 2nd, and 1st, where he won from pole back in 2019. And then bonus stats. Sunday marks 1,099 days since the last IndyCar race in Toronto. 10 drivers were in that last race. Half are with different teams now. Rodolfo Gonzalez has led more laps at Toronto than Rossi, Rosenquist, Ericsson, Herta, Sato, and Daly combined.
Oh, Rodolfo was amazing at Toronto, which, I mean, we anticipate a decent crowd, but we haven't heard anything. And I don't know if, that's good, bad, or indifferent. I guess we'll see. But it sounds like, from the quotes that we read this week and seen in terms of the size of the pit lane and how Green Savory Promotions have made adjustments to accommodate the 25 full-timers that we're going to have this weekend in Toronto. But there was also quotes about working to make the pit lane as large for as many as 30 cars in the future. So plans being made for Toronto for the future, for a race that, in the middle of COVID, we felt, does it ever return to Toronto? So some good news. Hopefully some people show up this weekend.
All right, getting to the schedule for this weekend. All these times Eastern time. Practice 1, Friday, July 15th, 2:30 to 3:45 in the afternoon. Again, everything on Peacock, IndyCar Live for international viewers who don't have access to a streaming platform, SiriusXM, IndyCar Radio. Same platforms for all of this. Saturday, 10 to 11 a.m., practice 2 for IndyCar. Qualifying, 2 o'clock to 3:15 in the afternoon on Saturday. Warm up 10:55 to 11:25 Sunday morning. And then the race, the broadcast window, 3 to 6 p.m. Again, only on Peacock, no USA, no IndyCar, NBC this weekend. And 3:20 approximately the green flag time listed on IndyCar.com. I'm sure that will be like 3:27 or something more specific.
Sure.
Be sure to be tuned in around 3:20 or so. For
Is that when
race.
the broadcast starts, or 3 o'clock? And they said, 3 minutes of commercials between the start of pre-race and the start of the race. So basically 1 break.
Well, no. That's 3 minutes total. This is from Nathan Brown of the Indy Star.
But are they going to break that up into minute segments or just 1 3-minute break?
Probably break it up into segments, but it'll be limited commercial interruption for this weekend on Peacock. So 3 minutes total for this weekend.
I don't know. The commercials don't really bother me as much as other people. I mean, that's a whole different conversation, but I watched last Mid-Ohio race delay on Peacock because I forgot to set my DVR, and every commercial break was like a minute long. And that was it. Now, it was because it was recorded and they got rid of, the 3, 4, 5 minute break and just replaced it for 1 minute. But I can't understand. I got to pay the bills, right? I don't understand. People are so spoiled by Formula One, but that's a discussion for another time. But it's good for, at least between the pre-race and the start of the race, minimal interruption.
Yes, for sure. And we'll see how this goes. But look, if they were going to put a race on Peacock, unfortunately, it's probably going to be this one, just for fear of cancellation at the time when the schedule came out. Race seems solid. Fans are excited. Canadians will be able to watch live on television through, I think, Sportsnet. And streaming Sportsnet 360, I think, is their package. So,
you bring up a good point on why Toronto is the Peacock race is, with the uncertainty with Canada and their COVID rules, you never knew what was going to happen, right? So if they were going to have a race that may fall off due to extenuating circumstances, it would be Toronto, and that's why it kind of got stuck with that Peacock date.
Another note, again, entry list not out as we were recording on Wednesday afternoon, but Takuma Sato will have Deloitte on the side pods for his entry this weekend, and Team Penske also earlier released their what am I trying to say? Their liveries for the weekend. I was drawing a blank, but their liveries for the weekend, and taking a look at who is in what car this weekend for Toronto. It'll be Joseph Newgarden in the Hitachi car, Scott McLaughlin, XPEL car, Will Power, of course, in the Verizon car. So that is what we know as far as liveries for this weekend. And I would presume that DHL will be on the side pods for Grosjean this weekend as well for Andretti, because they've already touted some events with DHL in Toronto.
There you go.
All right. All that said, time to pick a race winner.
Man, what if I said Alex Palou? No, but I will go. Man, it's tough not to go with a Penske driver, winning 6 of 9 races. And with the fact that we haven't been to Toronto and going on 3 years I feel like experience is going to be key at Toronto. I'm not going to think too far outside the box, and I'm going to go with Joseph Newgarden.
For a 4th win of the season.
Yeah. 4th win.
I'm tempted to pick Newgarden, but between Penske and Andretti, I feel like they have the 2 best street course programs as far as raw speed. I'm going to go with Colton Herta to rebound and pick up a win. Well,
trust me. I mean, the person that loves the attention that McLaren and Chip Ganassi Racing are getting over this week is Michael Andretti and Andretti Autosport. They could deserve to have the spotlight off them after what happened at Mid-Ohio, and we'll see if they can bounce back this weekend.
Yeah, first we brought it up because, well, there's nothing new on that front. Plenty new for some other teams in IndyCar. It's wild how quickly things change from week to week.
It's amazing. Love it. So, looking forward to Toronto, and we think considering Canada hotbed of IndyCar racing, discussions at some point getting a second race up in Canada. Hopefully, the response is pretty good this weekend in terms of people showing up after a couple-year hiatus.
If you agree or disagree with our picks or anything we've had to say about Herta, the Palou drama, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can find us on social media. Our Twitter handle is IndyCar Podcast. On Facebook, like us, just search for New Track Record. You can also email us your IndyCar questions, comments, or rants, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. Check out the website, newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, sign up for the email list so you never miss an episode or any special announcements. And you can join us on Patreon. Thanks to Xavier and Rob and others who have joined us. Patreon.com/newtrackrecord. We have 4 different supporter tiers starting at as little as $1 per month for you. And as always, you can find us on your favorite podcasting platform and follow us for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, CastBox, or wherever you find your podcasts. Okay, Justin.
Yes.
Mailbag time.
A lot to get to, I'm sure.
Yes. A whole lot to get to, and we're going to go back to last week before all the craziness of the past couple of days. And starting off on the mailbag, this from Stealth 1014. The poll on most to blame for Andretti Autosport's recent struggles. So there that topic comes back into play. I don't think it's the driving, it's the front office and strategy. How many times have Rossi, Ryan Hunter-Reay, and Marco been running top 10, only to have the team pit off cycle, taking the race out of the driver's hands, or screw up a pit stop? Hashtag countless. Yeah, that seemed to bite Marco quite a bit back in the day.
And numerous times over the course of the last several years that has bitten Andretti Autosport more than any other team. Sometimes it's strictly bad luck. Sometimes it's bad decision making or miscues. And those have happened more often at Andretti Autosport than almost anybody else in the paddock, let alone the top teams.
And speaking of Marco Andretti, M_Massey22, Michael Massey on Twitter, chatted with Marco after he finished runner-up last weekend's SRX event. And Marco says, I'm talking to some people about Xfinity. If I can hang with these guys, maybe I can hang in Xfinity. He's had a lot of success in SRX. Very competitive in that series.
I'd like to see him in Xfinity. I wouldn't watch, but it'd be cool to see Marco get another opportunity and be able to sling it around the track in Xfinity.
All right. We posted this poll again before all of the craziness, mind you. Will Colton Herta be in F1 in 2023? Again, before all the Palou news. So things have changed even more since this poll was posted, but several replies.
Seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, it really, really does seem like a lifetime ago. And 77% of you said no. 23% said yes. A few replies here. DC Soda just says, boy, that'd be a bummer. Indy Nathan 2024 would seem more likely, whether it's Andretti F1 or McLaren. The Roth says, what if alternatively he's the third AMSP driver? Huh. Interesting.
Wouldn't that just be crazy?
Yeah.
Now, are we as we see all these names pop up, and who the heck knows what Zach Brown has playing next? But he has said, I guess he has, whether this changes or not. I mean, three cars for McLaren full time. I mean, is there a scenario where McLaren has 4 full-time cars in IndyCar next year?
No, I think they run a fourth with a partial schedule, at least the month of May, and then maybe trickle in a few other races.
Okay.
But I don't see a fourth full time.
I don't think so either, but I mean, at this point, I don't know. I don't know if it's possible.
And then run_mark_run says 2024 is the earliest with the current McLaren contracts. Yeah.
Contracts mean nothing.
Current, the key word there. This from R. Cole wanted to bump this up. #random driver. He posted this back on the 14th of March, 2020. He sent a photo of Rodolfo Lavin, last week's Split Air Driver of the Week, in the Corona car. So shout out to Rob.
Pretty good looking car too.
Yes. All right. You posted this and got some good responses. In honor of Honda Indy Toronto's triumphant return to hosting IndyCar this weekend, what's your favorite all-time Canadian race? Scuba Steve 85 says Toronto 2001, Michael's lap 1 contact that led to an off-sequence strategy call that brought home his 7th Toronto victory. P. Gaynor 14 said Edmonton 2010, Elio confronting IndyCar officials, as you recall.
Yep.
And then Vicky Lynn 26 said, my hubby and I were there. That was crazy. What was your favorite Canadian race?
Mine?
Yes.
I would have to. What's that?
Do you have one?
No, not offhand. I would say, in terms of memories, the Elio one kind of sticks in my mind now after somebody mentioned it. But what about you?
I think the one that sticks out to me is Toronto 2011, when Dario tagged Will Power, and Will Power gave the whole Dario always drives me dirty comment.
That's right. My gosh, that was 2011. That was 11 years ago.
I think so.
Jeez.
It was either 2010 or 2011. I think it was 2011 though. I will double check. But that was a wild race back in that era. And again, they were championship rivals. I mean, that's what just made it so crazy. Yeah, Dario won that race. Power started on the pole. Power ended up finishing 24th. He got a stop and go penalty for that contact. So that was on lap 57. He hit Will Power. Power spun out. Then he was hit by Alex Tagliani out of the race. Power called Franchitti a dirty driver who mouths off about everybody.
That's
just a legendary interview.
Oh.
So that's my favorite.
I like it.
And rightfully so. That one sticks out as well. But obviously, Elio in 2010, that gave IndyCar some cred, I guess, in media elsewhere, because that was a struggling time for IndyCar back in that era. And it got a decent amount of attention. So obviously good for IndyCar to get some attention out of something. Okay, continue on with the mailbag. And talking about, you posted this, if IndyCar fans had smoke flares like the F1 fans do, specifically at Austria and the Netherlands.
There was photos on social media of people missing, couldn't see the start of the race in the section, the Red Bull section for Max Verstappen because of so much smoke.
Poet Shevchenko said orange for VK. They probably sell orange in bulk at this point. Yeah, I think that's the obvious one. Atlantic Cat 99, it would be pink for that annoying fence climbing dude. So we got an Elio hater. The Roth says yellow for Jimmy Johnson and his caution flags. Ouch.
That was a good one. And that was not me on a burner account, I promise.
Firehawk 89, orange. D Bishop 1987, Pato, and red, white, and green for sure. So Mexican flag colors. left_brigade. White, so every driver is constantly worried about engine trouble. That's funny.
That was funny too.
Good responses from everyone on that. All right, now we get to the Alex Palou stuff. These are replies to Alex Palou's tweet, and we just posted the emoji of the head exploding because, well, that's what that felt like. DC Soda says, and here we thought Andretti didn't have it together. Holy crap. Yeah. Hunter's Way 67. This is nuclear war. Holy crap. Who takes the number 10 car? Ilott, Malukas, Lundgaard. My hope would be for Bourdais. I know he's no kid anymore, but I'd love to see him get a shot in a top flight Indy car. And he adds, I can't believe I forgot VK. It's a possibility for the number 10. I'd love to see Bourdais get it just to have that opportunity.
Right.
And he's under Ganassi under contract in the sports car side.
Sports cars. Makes sense.
Poet Shevchenko, silly season after today. And it's a gif of an atomic bomb going off. Arkol says, survey says drama. Bauer Racing, this is going to be excellent.
I agree.
Zaxi8771, Palou wants that F1 pipeline in his life. Yeah, I think that is the key part in all of this, is just having that connection. And then more replies talking about the Adam Stern tweet on what went down, and Palou now announced to McLaren. Jeremy from HBG says this is the express lane version of Mansell leaving Williams back in the day. Honestly, I can't say I remember that. I mean, I was alive for it, but I don't remember it, but I'm sure it was wild.
Before our time. Yeah, but everything we've heard and seen, it was definitely huge. But I mean, that's a Formula One world champion coming to IndyCar. This is a IndyCar champion going to another team. So little comparing apples and oranges a little bit.
Nick J. Fletcher, breaking, Chip Ganassi Racing has signed Zach Brown to drive the number 10 in 2023. That's pretty funny.
I want to see Chip and Zach have some sort of altercation. I don't even need doesn't even need to be physical. I just need a yelling match between the two.
Jeremy from HBG, my best uneducated guess in this whole mess is Palou has a clause, gives him a buyout to go to F1. The rest is Chip throwing a tantrum. Yeah, I guess that is what I would speculate as far as him being able to get out of this.
Right. I mean, it brings up an interesting question. This is a rivalry that has been boiling, continues to boil, and is based in actual dislike. And what's the last rivalry in IndyCar between two drivers, teams, team owners, whatever, of this stature that was really, really based on not liking each other? Because for we've talked so much over the past decade or so, is everybody's nice, everybody gets along, all that stuff. In the heyday of IndyCar and kart, I'm sure it was a thing, but not in recent memory.
You posted this: fake quotes get you fired in journalism and PR realm. Is this a fake Alex Palou quote? Was it a quote given a while ago and put in the can by Ganassi PR? And some responses here. Hunter's Way 67. TK called it. He said Jaws would drop when we found out it was going to be the third McLaren car. Jeremy from HBG. Maybe Chip wrote it. Probably not. He probably just signed off.
Chip probably approved it.
Yes. And then this kind of follows up with that. And we have a lot of good responses here for two guys talking about us with backgrounds in journalism and news media. The most astounding thing out of yesterday came from Marshall Pruitt mentioning an article that motor racing teams sometimes make up fake quotes for press releases. It shocked me at first, but then when I learned, people write the quote out, but then it usually gets approved. Okay, right. That I can understand. That was
the missing piece of this. I mean, I come from a different world, but for sure.
Yeah. We come from a world where you would never make up a quote. You would have to have a quote from someone talking to you to be able to run a quote.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fireable offense to make up a fake quote for sure.
But having that context, it's still surprising the lack of approval. At least that is what Palou is alluding to in this case. Hunter's Way 67. And IndyCar's version of Drive to Survive just fell into their laps. They better not have dropped the ball on this. Yeah,
they dropped.
We'll see. CC Smith 1989. This has not surprised me at all. Owners especially have more important things to do than release a personalized quote for a weekend preview or sponsor release. I'm sure they just trust their PR or marketing team to do it for them in a way that paints it in a positive light. That I understand, I guess.
Yeah.
Daniel SEM 2004. All PR groups for every sports team or organization make up quotes for their athletes. Anytime you see a press release, those lovely crafted words from an athlete that can barely cobble together a sentence with a camera in their face were from PR. IndyCar Chick says, you really shouldn't be that surprised. The athletes aren't just sitting around waiting to give quotes for press releases. Usually it's a mixture of things they have said before, but should always have driver-athlete approval before submitting. MotoMel89 adds, I could totally see pre-crafting quotes to approve. The lack of approval is what really shocks me. But also, I don't know many people outside of the US, Canada who use folks like CGR did in that Palou quote. So maybe they need to work on their Palou voice a bit. LOL.
I could see that. Good point there. For sure. Yeah.
Tyler_Allen, so much for integrity and credibility. Where do these PR people learn it's okay to do that? One, Hugo Gimp. PR people do this all the time. Think it is bad in racing. Try writing the political world. Yeah, I'd rather not.
I'd rather not.
And Tarkov says, yeah, that's how press releases work. Actually, the person who the quote is attributed to does see it and approve it, though, and that didn't happen here if Alex is to be believed. So that is the disconnect on that. And there are a few other responses on that. Marshall Pruitt saying, very much a case of individual preference. Some drivers, owners don't care, don't want to be bothered with giving approving quotes every week, and some don't want a single word to go live without full oversight. As an aside, I assume every quote in a racing release is from PR. That's true. And then Mixed Up says they always get approved. That's the one single screw up here. Sounds like CGR push go on the release they would have done normally to force the issue and should have removed the quotes. Yeah, that would have changed this quite a bit.
Yes.
He still probably would have been upset, but not the quote would not have been attributed to him.
Absolutely.
And then we got this also from Steve Wittich. He sent to us. I went back and checked once. Dixon gave the same pre-race quote for Mid-Ohio 6 years in a row. I like that IndyCar has started to ask them to do the video quotes instead. So that is wild.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's just I get lack of time and being able to do all that, but it's a bad precedent. I don't like the fact that somebody else is writing quotes for somebody else. It's just, I guess, once again, going back on my journalism background and working in newspapers for the better part of 15 years, almost 20 years, is just something that, just doesn't sit right with me. And I understand lack of time and all that. It's just, I would feel better if people didn't do it.
Yeah, I agree. Now, not that I'm expecting drivers to sit around and say, here's what I want to say, but right. The approval part, I guess that part is the part that really shocks me the most.
I mean, it's just a bunch of basically, though, we understand the press releases are basically written by shills anyway, basically making everything sound great and fine and happy-go-lucky.
It's corporate speak.
Right. It's corporate shills, basically, is what it is. And as a journalist in my previous life, we would try not to use any quotes out of press releases if we had the opportunity to get other quotes. And that was just how I directed it. I know in the heat of the moment, right, you're on deadline, have to use whatever you can, but I would just steer clear of using quotes directly from a press release.
And we got this from Jaren Dimendal. And again, this is translated from Dutch, so apologies if any of this is mistranslated, but talking about, background in media and the whole made up quotes. In the middle of Palou-gate, it is extremely fascinating. This detail causes so much fuss. Almost every quote in every press release is formulated by a PR professional rather than by the person quoted. But maybe this is also professional information. I know it says deformation, but that's not really like a word for us. So I think information, is probably the correct word. Yeah. With that.
I mean, I understand it. I just don't like it.
Yeah, I agree. And then last one, this from Rock Vam D. Why would Palou want to leave a race team that is putting most of its drivers in the top 5 to 10 every week to go to a team having major reliability issues?
2 words, Formula One.
I'd say 3 words. Formula One, money.
Yes. I was going to say and money, but yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
No, yeah.
2 big reasons.
Not necessarily he's getting Formula One money, but just the possibility
he's getting more
of
money,
that opportunity and a lot more money than he's making now.
Yep.
All right, that wraps up the mailbag. As always, you can send us your tweets, Facebook messages, snail mail, or email us your questions, comments, rants, manifestos that you have regarding IndyCar each and every week.
I want to get a manifesto. Somebody send us like a just
the
loose,
IndyCar manifesto.
Yeah, just a loose notebook that's filled cover to cover on some sort of rambling manifesto on whatever IndyCar topic you desire.
News and notes time, and a few things to get to. Starting off, this article from Marshall Pruitt of Racer.com, IndyCar readying for grid expansion. 28 plus entries possible on the grid when next season gets underway. Not really any surprises here. Jay Fry saying we're already looking at what next year could look like, and we think we might be 27 to 29 cars. Looks like it's possible and all of them are legitimate. We could be close to 29 if they all come together, so we'll see how it plays out. We've had 26 cars at every round until, we had 26 at Mid-Ohio. It'll obviously be down to 25 this week. No Tatiana Calderon. We learned that no plan for them to run any races with the number 11 without Calderon or Hildebrand in the cockpit. So Benjamin Peterson, that was previously suggested. That does not sound like a plan moving forward. So who knows? I would be surprised if we see the 11 car on track the rest of the season unless they get additional payment from Rocket.
Waiting by the mailbox probably every day, seeing if that check comes. I understand why. Like, yeah, you got to pay the bills, and with 3 cars, you don't have the funding. You're not going to run it.
All right, this translated article that Indy 44 found, Fundadora track will be revived, and NASCAR and Indy cars are shaping up.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
So this is in Mexico? Parque Fundadora announced the total reconstruction of its 3.4 kilometer track. Interest from IndyCar and NASCAR in holding car races 2023 and 2024, similar to the Grand Prix of Monterey or Champ Car World Series that were held between 2001 and 2006. So we'll see. This is again translated article. We'll see how it plays out. I don't have a lot of faith, but this is an option. So you look at where this track is.
I think right now all indications, and I say that because, even though all indications were Alex Palou would be back with Chip Ganassi Racing in 2023, but it sounds like there won't be any crazy additions or even additions period to the schedule for 2023. I mean, if anything, maybe a Homestead, maybe an added oval earlier in the season. But other than that, I think we're looking at a pretty similar schedule to this year.
Yeah, so this is the track that hosted Champ Car, again, 2001 to 2006 in Monterey. So this is the hometown of Pato O'Ward. So all that makes sense. It's just, are there any legs to this beyond just this article? But they're looking at a rebuild of the track. It's a park. Construction would begin this Sunday to conclude in October. 24 million peso investment.
I don't know how much does it go. Go into details in terms of what those renovations are. Is it track renovations? Is it accommodations for teams and fans? I don't know.
They're going to demolish and then completely rebuild 50,000 square meters of Boulevard Acero in the area surrounding the runway.
That seems a lot to do in 2 months, but that's me.
Yeah, I would agree.
But hey, Cup NASCAR is going to make a Chicago street race work, so who am I to doubt anything at this point?
I have my doubts, but this would be really cool because IndyCar having a race in Mexico would be very, very exciting.
Hey, take advantage before Pato's in Formula One. That's all I got to say.
Yes. This says, although an unofficial source confirmed to Millennia, which is this website, multimedia's platform, that the new racetrack would push a real interest from NASCAR and IndyCar to hold competitions 2023 or 2024. Quote says, everything indicates that the intention is to leave the track in these conditions and that the races could return to Fundadora at some point. There's interest from NASCAR to come to Monterey. It's still unofficial. It would be for 23 or 24. We'll have the conditions to carry out car races again. Formula One not interested in the moment. NASCAR and IndyCar being explored, according to a state government source.
I would like IndyCar, if this was a thing, to take the initiative, and if there is racing returns to Monterey, IndyCar be first and not follow NASCAR.
Yes. And again, like you said, get this in before Pato Award potentially has gone to Formula One. It's a track around a park.
Track around a park sells itself.
Yes. We'll see how it works, but it's in the heart of the city, so access getting there, not an issue.
Good.
So we'll see how that works, but that is a possibility. And one other note, Scott McLaughlin got to throw out the first pitch at the Cubs game the other night.
A pretty good pitch, too, from what I saw.
Got it over the plate.
Yeah.
That's key.
It was not a 50 Cent like first pitch.
No.
And if you've seen it, you've seen it.
Who's the lady who had another terrible first pitch? Another singer.
Yeah, I remember she hit
Carly Rae Jepsen. That's who it was.
Okay, yeah, that's who it was. I remember that one too.
All right, time for tweets of the week. And one more note. Logan Sargent and Carlin Racing. Yeah, you remember that name. He now won the Austrian feature race.
Did you see how he won that? He finished fourth.
But there was a disqualification.
Several.
And a penalty. So he moved up.
He ended up winning the race. He wasn't even on the podium, but then ended up winning the race. So that's back-to-back wins for Logan Sargent.
Yes, that is correct. He's second in F2 points. So he's gone second, first, his last three races. And another note, Tim Crawford, father of Jack Crawford, who races in F3. They postponed plans to form an Indy Lights team. However, still exploring 2024 for that. Okay, now time for tweets of the week. First off from Poet Shevchenko. Andretti, we're the most dysfunctional team in IndyCar. Ganassi, hold my Taco Bell. Very funny.
Yeah, great text.
Kyle _ Benjamin TV. Chip Ganassi Racing exercises Alex Palou's option for there's a drive into deep left field by Castellanos. That'll be a home run. And so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game.
Tom Brenneman reference.
Yes, good stuff there. And Joseph Newgarden tweeting, I'm entertained, very, very entertained. Trackside Marty replying, announce that you're going to McLaren too. Really add some fuel to the flames.
Zach Brown probably made a run at everybody, including Joseph Newgarden.
All right, time now for our split air driver of the week.
We're going to keep it in the family, so to speak. We're going to go to Kart in 2001, and this isn't a absolutely obscure guy, but he raced for Chip Ganassi Racing, and there aren't very many borderline obscure guys that did that. So to honor Chip Ganassi Racing, who never lost this driver to McLaren, it's Nicholas Manassian in 2001, and raced a partial season in 2001 for Chip Ganassi, including the 2001 Indianapolis 500. Now, of course, in 2001, it was the year with Chip Ganassi competing in kart, but also entered the 500. Manassian finished 29th at the Indianapolis 500 that year and raced 6 other races for kart that year. Best was an 8th at Long Beach. And let's see, he got a 11th at Monterey. Speaking of Monterey, at the Fundadora Park in Monterey. That year, a crowd of 116,000 people watched that race. It was the kart season opener in which Manassian finished 11th there.
Helps when you have Adrian Fernandez competing.
A little bit.
Michel Jourdain Jr. competing as well.
But a lot of finishes in the 24-hour of Le Mans. That's really where Nicholas Manassian competed for almost 20 years, it looked like, starting in the mid-1990s and going all the way through 2016 with SMP Racing. It's a familiar name.
Yeah. Michaela Lotion.
Yeah, right? So, but that was one and done for Manassian in open wheel. Did kart again 2001. Did the Indianapolis 500 in 2001, and then did V8 supercars for a couple years as well. Did Bathurst, American Le Mans. So pretty accomplished driver in other disciplines, but the one and done in IndyCar, still only 49 years old. So was relatively young when he joined Chip Ganassi Racing, but it was a driver that didn't leave for McLaren. But he won the ASCAR Oval Racing Series in 2002 and never heard of it.
I've not heard of it either.
But apparently it was a thing. But he was unable to secure a Formula One drive for that 01 season. So his backup plan was Chip Ganassi Racing in 2001. So competed with Bruno Junqueira.
Junqueira, the pole sitter, I believe, in 2001 for the Indy 500.
Both of them raced in F3000 in the late 90s. So they knew each other then, and then were teammates, at least for a partial season in kart with Chip Ganassi Racing. But like I said, keeping the family a little bit, talk some Chip Ganassi Racing, and this week's Random Split Era Driver of the Week, Mr. Nicholas Manassian.
And to correct myself, that was Scott Sharp, the pole sitter in 2001.
Oh, we remember how that went.
Yeah, we do. I'm not sure how I got that mixed up, but yes, and a Random Split Era Driver of the Week that I've actually heard of.
Yeah, right. I felt I wasn't going to look too far, because what I did is I just went to Chip Ganassi Racing's drivers and felt I got to find something here, and went with Manassian. It fit the mood this week.
For sure. All right. Well, that wraps up this week's episode. We'll be back next week to recap the Honda Indy Toronto and any other drama that comes out of this weekend. I'm sure there is plenty that come out of this weekend, and we'll know a lot more with all this Palou, Ganassi, McLaren mess. That is next week on New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.